And as of right now, there are 7 candidates to replace Justin Trudeau, including Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, and former House Leader Karina Gould.
So it looks like we finally have all the picks for the leadership race of the Liberals locked in. And now all the conversations are focused around who's going to win, who's the top pick, who has the most support, this, and that. Now, I ended up watching a panel on CBC that David Cochrane actually wasn't a part of, which was nice. So that's kind of what I want to break down. But while I was watching this, I came across another clip of Mark Miller calling Pierre a jackass over and over again over the whole trans situation. Take a look.
I also, Pierre Poilievre, again, is being a jackass with his whole weaponization of the gender debate. He said he only recognizes 2 genders. I've only ever seen him really recognize one or spend most of his time on one gender, so at least that's a step up. But again, he has to be stopping a jackass on gender issues. It's just stupid and it's not mature.
This guy is just such a goof. And for the party who's so, oh, that's not parliamentary language, you can't be rude, or let's be nice to each other. This guy was complaining, and all of the Liberals were complaining when Pierre called Trudeau a wacko, but he's allowed to be here calling him a jackass over and over again. Now, to me, they're just words. It doesn't really matter. And obviously, they're not in the House, so there's no parliamentary protocol in a sense where they have to watch their language. But it is kind of rich coming from Mark. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of the conversation is about the leadership race, and Mark Carney seems to be getting into the lead right now in terms of the support from the cabinet ministers and Liberal MPs. And this panel kind of talks a little bit about it. And at one point, it does get a little bit heated. So take a look at this.
Did you hear Chrystia Freeland on the House? We just played a clip before the show began. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but Chrystia Freeland was telling Catherine Cullen that she sees Mark Carney as the PMO's choice. That, PMO is lining up behind Mark Carney, trying to paint him, I guess, as sort of the ultimate insider. Yeah. What do you make of that strategy?
I noticed that the only place I've seen it reported is in the Toronto Sun, not known to be a bastion of Liberal support. So I directly asked 2 very senior people in PMO.
Now, just from that quick answer, if anyone's familiar with the CBC's panel or their Power and Politics show, you would know that this guy is a Liberal. Now, the woman beside him, she's NDP, and the gentleman across from him, Fred, that's the Conservative member. But I do find it interesting that I believe his name is Greg. Greg here decided to call out the Toronto Sun, which is definitely more conservative leaning, saying he's only seeing this being reported there. When right below him, under the banner, it says Freeland tells CBC News that Carney is looking like the PMO's candidate. So very, very hilarious that this is what he's trying to lead off with when that shows up right below him. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the PMO, it means that's the Prime Minister's office, and that would be like Katie Telford when Gerald Butts was there. He was part of the PMO and all that. So that's what they're saying is the people behind the scenes who are more hands-on with the Prime Minister are personally picking Carney. Now, he does kind of combat this, and he tries to say that he reached out to the PMO himself, and they told him, no, we wouldn't do that. But can you really believe anybody that's part of the Prime Minister's office? It's been scandal after scandal. But don't take my word for it. Take a listen to what he has to say.
Are you allowed to be involved? And they said directly, no. There was a conversation. If you don't want to be involved, then tell us. Or you want to be involved in a campaign, tell us, and we will, you're either going to have to move out or you're going to move on. That doesn't mean that people aren't behind the scenes, giving advice, things like that. But they have set this up for themselves. So if someone from the PMO is caught, and they have said they're not allowed, so they've set this marker themselves. So again, I directly asked this, they said no one's being involved. I think it may be convenient in terms for Chrystia Freeland, in light of how she departed cabinet, that might fit the narrative, but I don't think it fits the reality.
Mel, what do you make of so many cabinet ministers lining up behind Mark Carney? I mean, they work with Chrystia Freeland for years, many of these people. They know her well. I'm sure they're on friendly terms. But was it that dramatic break in December? Is that what sealed the deal? Is that why so many people are going for Carney? And what do you make of him having such a big lead in the number of MPs lining up behind his candidacy?
Right. Well, it shows that he's been working on it for a while, that this isn't something that, they're throwing together at the last minute. So I think that says one thing. I'm a big believer, and particularly as it relates to caucus, but a big believer that when you're taking punches at yourself, you're taking punches at yourself, right? So I think it'll probably be hard for those other cabinet ministers to, unless they were with Chrystia Freeland and asking her to do what she did, it'll be pretty hard to kind of forgive that because they suffered because of that. The Liberal brand suffered because of that, and therefore candidates in the next election under the Liberal brand will suffer because of that. So I can appreciate why it's hard to come around. It's also kind of funny, you said she's trying to make Mark Carney the PMO's choice. You were the PMO's right hand until like a few weeks ago. All of the decisions that have been made by this government were basically made by you. You were Deputy Prime Minister, you're Finance Minister, so all of the programs, all of the things that the government has put forward, you signed off on. So it's a little bit funny to me that you can say, well, he's the PMO's guy. I think they're all kind of the PMO's guy. They're all, the Prime Minister's choice because they all worked really closely with the Prime Minister. So that may work with some folks. I don't think it passes the kind of reality test. I don't think that anybody will believe in the distancing of the Prime Minister that one person is over the other. I think that was a little silly.
Now, I totally agree with everything that Melanie said, because that's what we've been talking about for the past few days, if not weeks, about how all of these guys are the exact same as Justin. They're trying everything right now to separate themselves as much as they can, but they can't run from their past. Freeland deleting all of her social media just to put her campaign in, have a fresh start, doesn't work. All these liberals backpedaling and saying, oh yeah, we don't believe in the carbon tax now, or we have to relook at it because it wasn't a good idea, or the capital gains tax, or now saying, now we need to listen to Canadians, that's not going to work. So for Freeland to then say, oh yeah, Carney is the PMO's pick, when she herself was the PMO's right-hand person, a little bit rich. And even Karina Gould, she was handpicked by the Prime Minister. So none of them can really say that one is a PMO's pick over the other. But now we're going to start to get into where it gets a little bit heated between Greg and Fred. As Fred's being asked some questions and replying, Greg then kind of chimes in, defending Stephen Guilbeault for one portion of it. But then when the host starts to ask Fred about conservative base-led attacks against Mark Carney specifically, while Fred's answering and saying, well, Carney's talking to elites, Greg, for some reason, takes offense to this because he recently has talked to Carney, but he doesn't consider himself an elite. So he claps back, but he claps back in such a strange way. Take a look.
Fred, what do you make of this framing from Chrystia Freeland that Carney is the PMO's pick? He's the ultimate insider. She's trying to frame herself as the scrappy underdog who's now trying to reject a lot of the things that the government did. Is that an effective strategy?
Justin Trudeau's longest serving, most loyal minister and right hand.
Which he said on the way out too, right? He said that.
Yeah.
Look,
both of them are running very strange strategies on this. She is the anti-liberal who's against everything that she did, and Mark Carney is running as an insider. He is hugging every single liberal cabinet minister he can find and say, yeah, I agree with you. And Stephen Guilbeault, who, this is a leadership race where every single riding is worth 100 points. And Western Canada is 1/3 of the votes. And Stephen Guilbeault is, Mr. Carbon Tax, Mr. Shut Down the Oil Industry, is now praising Mark Carney. And to me, it's a strange strategy that they're all running from who they should be running from. If I was Mark Carney, I would be trying to run an outsider campaign. I'm coming in, I'm going to make changes, I'm going to bring the change Canada needs. I have a great background in economics. I'm Bank of Canada, Bank of England that I led. Instead, he's hugging this Trudeau cabinet as if, he's, from what I see, he's Justin Trudeau without the charisma.
On the Guilbeault thing, I think this is one of those things where ROC, Rest of Canada, does not have a great understanding sometimes of Quebec. And I remember back on a lot of the environmental policies, preparing for one of these panels, and someone saying to me, there's an old beer ad, those who like it a lot. Those who like Guilbeault, they like his policies, they like them a lot. And he's very popular in Quebec. Any riding that has a university, any riding that has a cultural community, and even some ones that we wouldn't normally think of, but he is popular in those. So I get what you're saying. If I lived in Alberta, I would wonder, that seems like a strange strategy. But if you live in Quebec and you see that, and the environment is important to you, cultural French rights are important to you, you see that endorsement, that was a good thing for Mark Carney in Quebec.
Yeah, look, status quo for Mark Carney, if that's what he wants to be, the continuation of Justin Trudeau, that's fine.
Fred, can I just ask you about that Michelle Rempel-Garner clip? We don't see her camped outside a Chrystia Freeland event.
A week after launching his campaign, and longer than that after going on American TV to soft launch his campaign, we have heard absolutely nothing. Zero. Crickets from this man about what he would do as Prime Minister. Where's Waldo? Where's Waldo? Where is carbon tax, cocktail, canapé Carney in Ottawa?
They're not necessarily trying to find her and try to get her to answer questions, and they're not necessarily worried about what she's doing and what she's saying. A lot of Conservatives seem to be very concerned about Mark Carney. They wanted him to talk. They're, pressuring us to ask questions to him. Conservatives are running a bunch of, digital attack ads against him, using all their pet names for him. One of their spokespeople said to me today, he will be PM in a few short weeks. They think that he's got this locked up. What is this all about? Are they just worried about him? They think that he is the most of a threat to Pierre Poilievre?
You used the word concern. It's not concern. They're aware. They know. Conservatives have been talking about it for a year. Mark Carney is going to be the replacement of Justin Trudeau. That's been the plan. And as we talked about earlier, it's PMO and everyone else and all the liberal elites are lining up behind him and pushing him out. He is their choice of candidate. He is going to be the leader of the Liberal Party. This is a party, like if Mark Carney, he's not talking to, he's disappeared since he launched, right? He's not talking to Liberal members. He doesn't seem to be talking to Canadians. He's talking to Liberal cabinet minister and elites.
That's not
that's
true.
What he's doing.
Look, I got a call from Mark Carney, and I am neutral.
A Liberal elite. You're a TV guy.
I'm such a Okay, great. We come from the same place. We're not.
Brother,
you call me elite. I'm calling your dad.
Okay.
On this,
Look, and everyone wants your spot.
But I think that what the Conservatives wanted, what Poilievre wanted, was to have a carbon tax election against Justin Trudeau, and now he's going to have neither one of those, and he starts talking about trans rights. How did that work for Blaine Higgs?
No, he didn't talk. He was asked about it.
Okay.
No. Was he not? He was asked.
No, but
this was not something.
Well, maybe he should do more interviews. He'll get better at them.
And that right there is why 99% of people probably don't listen to the Liberals anymore or watch the CBC, because nobody outside of Fred decided to fact check Greg by saying, no, Fred's correct. Pierre didn't bring up the trans issue. That host on CP24 was asking him questions about Donald Trump signing that initial order saying that there's only two genders. And the news anchor was the one that asked Pierre about the trans stuff and if he recognized more than that. Pierre didn't bring it up. That didn't come out of Pierre. And even earlier today, he was asked again about this same situation. Take a look.
After his announcement in Fredericton, Pierre Poilievre spoke to Global News about his policy around gender identity. Poilievre has said that he's only aware of two genders.
My policies on this have been very clear. No men in women's prisons, sports, or bathrooms. And we believe that it's inappropriate for dudes to be in women's prisons, in women's sports, and in women's bathrooms.
First of all, nothing that he said there was wrong. I'm sure a vast majority of you guys also believe the same thing. But this is the other proof that we have. Like CP24, their host asked, Global, their reporter asked, Pierre's not running on a gender or trans ban campaign. He's running on a carbon tax election campaign. He was simply asked a question, he answered that question, and you guys just don't like the answer that he gave. So now you're in your feelings and you're being offended by everything. It doesn't make any sense, guys. But the last part I want to take a look at here is I want to pivot back to Melanie, because she kind of starts ripping into Karina Gould and Chrystia Freeland about the way they're acting now while trying to backpedal away from all these policies that they were very gung-ho for. So take a look at this.
I take their point, though, that a lot of people are abandoning things that they were all of a sudden they were gung-ho about it. Now all of a sudden they're like, I'm not so sure about that. And I was really struck by Karina Gould yesterday. As she submits her party papers at the deadline and she's speaking to reporters, she's disavowing the capital gains tax hike. She is saying she wants to make the GST holiday permanent on many goods, which the government was not necessarily on side with initially. She wants to stop all the carbon tax hike increases. She was going after the party brass, saying they need to revive the membership. Party brass have been ignoring the grassroots for a long time. So she was essentially tearing down a lot of the things that the Liberals believed in and did over the last 9 years. What do you make of that strategy? Why are they doing that now? Is it just because they're so unpopular and they're just trying to turn the page? Like, it does seem to be like a heavy lift to disavow so much of what you believed in for so long.
Totally. I think there's always space in politics to say, you know what? Maybe we made a mistake here. Maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we need to go back to the drawing board, revise. You know, I hear you. You don't like this. We're gonna make some changes. Fine. I think it is very different when you've spent the last 10 years, right? 2015. The last 10 years, Chrystia Freeland and both Karina Gould were elected in 2015.
Yeah. Karina Gould, cabinet minister since 2017. So she's been around the table a long time.
You've been around the table. She was the leader in the House for so long. Like, there is a difference between maybe a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, saying, we hear you, folks are really having a hard time. You think that this is the problem. We don't agree with you that this is the problem, but we've obviously lost the narrative on that. You have now accepted that this is making your life harder. I hear you. I'm going to go back to the drawing board to fix it. However many days after the Prime Minister resigns, and now you're going for the leader job and you're saying all of a sudden you hate all the things that you put forward, I don't think people believe. That's two very, very different things, right? If they had, been publicly saying they're not sure about this, or even publicly when concerns were raised, I remember, Minister Freeland, it's just the response was always, oh, well, things are so much better here than everywhere else, right? There was no meeting of, I hear you, maybe we'll take a look at that. I still believe that we're going to do this, but maybe we'll take a look at it. It was always, nope, these are all the best things. So to now do a complete 180, I don't buy it. I don't think a lot of folks will buy it, but like the job right now is for Liberal members. It's not for everyday Canadians. So we'll see how that goes first with those members, and then, we'll see how that tests with regular folks who don't have party cards. In a few months.
And I got to give it to Melanie because she hit the nail right on the head. These guys are a bunch of phonies and they're getting called out on it. They essentially think you could just slap lipstick on a pig and everybody's going to be fine with the Liberal Party. They're like, oh, don't mind all the mud that's all over us. Just look at this new fancy lipstick that we got. It's beautiful, right? It makes us look so much different. We're not the same pig that we just were rolling around in the mud 2 seconds ago. Because now we're so pretty. That's not how things work. So call an election, get out of the way, let us decide who the next prime minister actually is, not this little faux prime minister that you're going to automatically get in power just because you're the Liberal Party. We don't want that. We want the election. We want the vote. So just move out of the way and let it happen.